If you watched the Golden Over vlog, then you will know exactly what this video is, and that is a run through of my Malice from Marvel Rivals cosplay. I will also be uploading a little reel on my cosplay Instagram where I will share a little mini tutorial, but it'll be very fast paced. So this one is going to go in depth onto what I did for each part of the cosplay. So if you are interested in making your own Malice cosplay, you'll hopefully find some inspiration here. Or if you're just along for the ride, enjoy. So for a little bit of background, when I was making this, only one or two other sort of big creators that I could find had done this cosplay, and they only had like partial tutorials as well, so I was very much raw dogging this whole costume. I believe it is gaining a little bit more traction now though, so there are a few more cosplayers popping up with bits and pieces of tutorials and things. Kinpatsu Cosplay was one of them, and she was releasing start of the chest piece and a glove like tutorial as I was finishing mine, so there's definitely room to recreate this cosplay in like a higher quality, I guess, that could last longer. But this is what I ended up creating, so let's dive in. Okay, starting with the chest armor, because I feel like this is one of the biggest parts of the costume. Otherwise it is just a lot of little pieces all put together. So starting with the bulkiest, biggest piece, I made this with the help of Adrian and used a foam, you can probably see a little bit there, a foam base. I did the tape wrapping to get like a fitted figure, and then obviously I had to bring it a little bit bigger to fit foam around me as well though. And then I coated it in some pleather. This was actually surprisingly difficult because not a lot of adhesives would work properly with adhesing the pleather to the foam. So that was fun. And then this little piece is just a sketched up design that I did off of looking at the picture, and then I painted in the black design parts and whacked her on there. These are all made out of foam, and I painstakingly cut little strips and glued them onto these to create some texture. Only after doing this did I see a TikTok of another creator who had done her Malice, and she had like indented instead of adding to, and I was like, oh, that would have been better. But it's fine. These close to my body, I've added some little Velcro bits which I then added to the bodysuit to keep it all together and nice and fitted. And it is all kept together by a zipper. Now she does have an extra detail of something that hangs over the top of this, but I ran out of time to make that, so that was gonna sort of cover the messy seam lines that I created here. But then the coat, like the little capey bit, ended up covering it anyways, so I didn't stress about it. Moving on to the shoulder spiky bits. Now these, along with anything else that I say is 3D printed, was printed by Benny. Absolute lifesaver. And then we sanded and painted these. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but there is little tiny daub of hot glue just to be slightly less of a hazard of other people and myself, because they are really close to your eyeballs, and that was terrifying. So I used a bit of elastic across the back and then loops for under the arms just to keep it kind of stabilized and in the right spots. This worked, but because she has no material under her arms, I ended up with mad pressure sores because of the rubbing of the elastic all day. Not a vibe, so I will be altering these slightly for the next con that I wear them to closer to the end of the year. I shall also link the 3D files that we used for this Malice, because I know there is a couple online. Now Malice doesn't wear shoes, right? So she is barefoot with like a little bit of material wrapped around them that goes up into her sort of leg boot thing. Obviously at cons we can't do that, so I thought the next best thing would be a heel, because it'll keep that nice shape, good shape in the legs and everything as well. And then it's something I can attach the stretchy like bootleg material to. So I broke it up into two sections. So there's one that goes over the shoe and then one that sits on top of that and up my leg. This did work really well, aside from the fact that I got mad blisters because this was my first time wearing these shoes. So I will be putting some protection around my heels for the next con. Okay, pre-warning, this is gonna look really rough. Here is the bodysuit that I used for the Malice under costume. I left it open bar from like a few little strips to keep it together, just so that I could have that really open lower part of the suit. It all ties together with a big zipper down the back, some big armpit holes, and I used this stretchy kind of fabric for most of the bodysuit. Again, I made this doing the method of taping your body and drawing up your sort of silhouette and your lines that you want and the shapes, and then using that as your template. I am very beginner with stretch fabrics. I'm still learning a lot, and I'm not really, there's a lot I don't understand about how they sew. So I had a lot of issues with this where I would have to fix parts and then other parts would move, and it was a lot. It was a lot. But in saying that, with the lower part of the bodysuit, I did struggle with getting a nice clean cut sort of underwear line per se, and I didn't want it too bunchy or too small because it's a con, so it needs to be durable and comfortable and not stressful. So I ended up just finding a pair of underwear and stitching them onto the bottom, and that actually worked amazingly. And these are the upper body stockings, leggings, plus straps. Now there's a little bit to unpack here, so bear with me. I ended up having a lot of issues keeping them up. They would slide down even with using these, which I attached to the stockings, and then, you know, tried to really like pull them tight and whatnot. It just kept falling down. Body tape thing, I know that works for a lot of people. That just kept pulling off of my skin anytime I would like move. And so I was like, well, this isn't gonna work. It could have been the material, I don't really know. But it wasn't working for me. So my friendos suggested that I try stockings, and the morning of con, Jeannie then stitched these together so that they were in the right position. These are a one-time kind of wear when you're wearing these kind of costumes. There's already pulls and holes in these and stuff, so I will be removing them and adding a fresh pair for the next con. For all of the strapping, I used foam underneath, so you can still see the foam through there, and then I stitched fabric to them and then created some like little lines and things in there, and then this is another 3D printed piece. I did alter the design slightly just for comfortability's sake, because, you know, con wears can't always be completely accurate if you want to be able to move in them for extended periods of time. There were also a handful of last minute things that I did to pull it all together, and so some things I left unpainted because it was already black, and the different textures I kind of liked the way it looked anyways, but I might go and like recreate this look again when I have more time before I'm gonna wear it somewhere. But these are like the little foam pieces that all velcro together and created like the little wrist guard things. They're all stuck together, and little layering pieces as well. And these are the other more last minute pieces as well. So I glued on all the spikes onto these, added some textures and some velcro, and then used these on my legs. And the final two parts of Malice, the scarf and coat and the helmet. This was relatively simple to put together. I just made your basic sort of strip, stitched it together, and then used some like sort of bobby pins to create some more textures while it was actually sitting on. Bobby pins, safety pins. And I made them separate just to make it easier to get ready. And then one of my favorite parts is the back cloak. So here are more 3D printed pieces that I have attached in. So I hand stitched these in place, glued this one, and then also hand stitched these bad boys as well. And then I just mapped out this design and then made my own little pattern for it. It was relatively simple. I just matched it to my actual dimensions, I guess, like heights and things like that. And then added some Velcro strips, which these then attach to the chest piece, which has the other Velcro strips on them. And finally, the helmet and wig. So for the wig, I ended up just buying a cheaper grey wig online that I could sort of hack up and messy up and things like that, so that it would take a lot of the thickness out of like the top of the wig and leave it at the back. The only issue with this logic though was that it made it that I had to keep the helmet on all day because it was atrocious under there. This is the front of the wig. not a pretty sight. It looked even worse on, to be honest. But the back of it's all like gelled into like pieces and spikes and things, and that part looked great. Not being able to take my helmet off all day, not so great. So for Brisnova or OzCon, whichever one I wear it for, at the end of the year, I will be purchasing a new grey wig that has a lace front so I can just style the hair all backwards, and then I can take the helmet off to let my face breathe. Yeah. I 100% just knocked off a spike. It lasted on an entire con day of, you know, being knocked around and whatnot, and no spikes came off. And then I've just done it now when I'm about to show you. I will fix it later. As you can see, it is a 3D printed helmet. We tried to do like a foam base and then tried a few different things of how to make this kind of texture. It didn't go very well. The thing I was going to try before we ended up printing this though was like using material and sort of shaping it over the top of a foam base, which could work. It could work. I couldn't find any like tutorials on how anyone else was making theirs, so we went for the printing option and printed this guy last minute. So shout out to Benny for being an absolute lifesaver. Goes on with some little magnets. They're like high strength magnets. You've got to really pull this guy if you want it to come undone. Which is great because it means it's stable for my head. And then I had styled the pieces on the front of the wig and then chopped them off and glued them to this so that she had some styling pieces. Now with my face shape, I struggle to wear things that are like helmets or like masquerade masks and stuff because my jaw goes very narrow, but my upper head is kind of, it's a normal width, you know, but then it goes very narrow down low. So things tend to look like extra bulky on my head. But thankfully we used some heat and we gently molded the pieces here and brought them in so that they were basically flush with my face, and it looked so good. The only difference is I just used a piece of elastic under here, and she does technically have like a chin strap, but again with the narrower jaw I figured it'd be better to work with my face than against it. And this helped it just stay in place a little bit better as well. Because we used this though is why I have the option now to be able to wear a fancier wig, because there's like a smidge bit of room in here to work with versus like the other foam things that I was making before where they were like tight on your head kind of thing, you know. So that's great because now I can have a pretty wig and I can take the helmet off, breathe for a little bit, put it back on. Like it's gonna be amazing. I'm super excited about that, to be honest. So there's a quick little breakdown of all of the pieces that make up the Malice costume and how I threw them together. This cosplay definitely ended up being a team effort and I am not mad about that whatsoever. If this video was helpful for you or you got a little bit of inspo for your next cosplay, then definitely hit that like button and subscribe, and I will catch you in the next video. Alright, bye!